Well, hey there, guys. Michael here for another update. Got Christy in.
Hey guys.
We're going to talk about some legal updates. Obviously, we haven't been on in a while, but we're going to get into some of that, FAA documents and what all kind of in there. What's the story that we're seeing out of all of that, and where things kind of stand. And then I want to take a little time and go deeper into what we put out as far as what we're considering some of the key issues that we need to be focused on in Etowah County, at least what us as Advanced Etowah think we really need to be focused on discussing. So stick around. If that's interesting to you, then definitely hang out. We'll see what's going on. If you're watching this later, skip on ahead. We're going to give it just a couple minutes for folks to jump on. And I got a Facebook user saying hello. Hopefully you can hear me. So I want to make sure the audio can. How are you today?
I'm good. Hope everybody's doing, having a great Monday today. It is Monday, isn't it?
It is.
No.
It is Monday. Monday at lunch, we'll see how many folks are out there. Sound is great. Awesome.
Great.
Thank you. All right, so while we're letting some folks jump on, be sure to hit that share button. Just give it a little click and put it over on your timeline. Maybe tag somebody you think might be bored at lunch and wants to talk about the renter implant, politics, legal stuff, super exciting things. I know you live for it.
I do. This is not only my job and what I enjoy, but like most of people that are watching as well, I care a lot about it because this is my home and a place I love. So yeah. It's kind of like the same for all you guys. So it means a lot to me.
Well, while we're kind of waiting for more folks to jump on, I will say, we've it's been a little while since we've really been on. I think with the current COVID spike that's gone through, I think it got us both. Went through houses. Nothing severe with either of our families, thankfully, but certainly disruptive to life.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
No kidding. So we've been running through that, and then I think we as Advanced Etowah, we've kind of been discussing a little more detail on next steps and kind of where to go and things to focus on. All right. So we threw out, and I'll jump in just real quick again as we're waiting on folks to jump in. The issues that we are seeing, we kind of laid out. I dropped a video kind of laying out our core principal issues. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into that. But I want everybody to understand that where we came up with that, or where that came from, number one, it's not rocket science. We didn't have some magical political epiphany. It's really some pretty basic stuff, and that's really kind of the point. We don't want to get into super complex political science and, socioeconomic discussions and all of this. We really kind of feel like as we've gone through this rendering plant fight, we've really seen there's just some basic stuff that we really need to get fixed in our community before we ever really have very advanced discussions, before we can ever really decide on where we want to go. We need to have some really basic conversations to help build mechanisms for us as citizens to inform elected officials, because at the end of the day, they work for us and not for anybody else. So we kind of, that's where we kind of came up with those core foundational. I know there are a ton of problems, and I've seen a few comments of other issues in the community, which we definitely are not saying those aren't issues. we're kind of looking at it. I think the best way I can describe it is we're really focused on the business growth, the things that can go a long way to or foundational to raising that, per capita income, building the businesses that are here, giving them more opportunity to thrive, making it easier, and giving better chances for those that want to start businesses to grow, create more jobs, attract, build a better business environment that, attracts businesses that will pay more. Because if we don't, that's, I guess, would that be a fair way to describe, there's a lot of issues. We're looking at it from the lens of what's really going to move the needle that we really need to be talking about as we've come through this rendering plant thing, and identified those issues. What are those things that are really going to move the needle for our community, and give us an opportunity to instead of decline like we have, to actually start, growing or heading in a direction that we as citizens think that it should head.
It would, and if you fix these things, then it will resolve a lot of the other problems in an organic way. Like, these are
right.
foundational issues that really translate in the relationship between the government and those that they serve. And if you fix that, then it should automatically resolve a lot of the other problems that would naturally. So instead of sort of aiming at what the symptom is, get straight at the disease and cure that.
Right.
And that's kind of what it's aimed at. That's what I really like about the ones that what you've got up there, is because if you fix those, then it's going to resolve a lot of the other things. And we get so distracted with things that can be a problem, this problem here and there, and we kind of sometimes ignore, well, how did this actually, how did we get here? How do we have these different problems all in the same area? And if we kind of fix the fundamentals, then I think that will go a long way to doing it. So I'm excited to see the issues that Advanced Etowah has put out there. You guys know, the leadership issues and the transparency and the relationship the government has with those that they serve, is to me such a foundational issue with the rendering plant we've seen, that having leaders that have the same vision and are interested in asking what those they serve think and how they want our county to go and what they see, what and being able and having that type of conversation, I think, is a really important, which we haven't seen. And so I'm excited to see what leaders, what people running for office, what they have to say about all of that. I think it's going to be exciting. So, conversation with community leaders. I think that's a great segue to get us rolling into kind of an update on where things stand with what's going on. So I don't know where you would plan to start. Well, I'll just start. And okay. We'll go from there. You go from there. Y'all ask any questions as we start going down the road. If you have anything I'm not hitting that you want to ask about, a lot has happened. I going back to the beginning of the whole rendering plant problem is the lack of the transparency and the communication and the understanding of the people, of where the leaders were going, why all these behind the scene conversations were happening, why they were being hidden from public view. And, we spent so much time, particularly early on, kind of pulling that information out and forcing some information into the light. We still don't have it all. Can I disturb you real quick? Course, I see a comment in there. Mm-hmm. Somebody's watching, Linda, watching no sound. Uh-oh. Is anybody else having that problem? If you can hear me, just let me know if we are having some issue. It may be on your device if you wanted to log out, log back in type of thing. Reset. All right, sound is good. Sound is good. Okay. All right, so Linda, sorry, just want to make sure. Sure. So Linda, that may be on your device. All right, cool. I just want to make sure we didn't get too far down the road and then it turned out nobody could hear us.
All right, we'll jump back. Go for it.
So part of we spent months and months kind of pulling the information out, what we knew what was happening, but we're being told, no, there's nothing to see here. Find out that yes, it was happening, and that they were much further down the road. Why do I bring that back up again? Because that's the problem when we can't have we don't want another rendering plant or another problem like this, or the rendering plant itself to come back up again. We've got to make sure that from a transparency point of view, that no more of these behind the scenes where these conversations are happening outside of the public view, and our government is continuing that. And so we knew all along in this whole rendering plant battle, we'd been hearing these behind the scenes meetings were going on, these conversations were taking place every time. We were told that didn't happen, and come to find out it was. And so then fast forward to most recently, still at the airport authority, where we knew we'd been told that these, all these executive sessions that the airport authority had been having were the actual public business was being conducted behind closed doors. If you'll remember, we had those great public meetings in August where the public came to speak. But after that, the airport authority did not have 1 minute of public discussion about the 2 proposals that were made at those August meetings. Not 1 minute. They had an executive session at every meeting after that, and we were being told that litigation was the only thing that was happening in those closed door meetings, which is allowed. If litigation, if the strategy between the client and the attorney, or what the topics are, that's a legitimate reason to go into the closed door sessions. But we had been hearing that discussions way beyond that were going on, and in fact, there was, discussion or about the choosing of the 2 proposals between the Etowah community proposal and the Pilgrims one. And so we had been told that, and I had been, emailing the attorney going, I'm hearing this is going on. What's happening? No. Come to find out that we did, that Ken Robertson then came out and acknowledged at this last airport authority that yes, indeed, that the conversations that were going on in the executive sessions were beyond the scope. And I know Michael Advanced Etowah posted the video of what Ken said at the January 21st, 2022 GAA meeting. He said, hold on, I have one thing to say in regards to our executive sessions in the past. During meetings I have attended where there were closed executive sessions, the GAA discussed matters and deliberated on matters which were not subject to the exceptions allowed and should have been discussed during the public portion of the meetings, to which I had explained my opposition during the meetings. In my opinion, the executive meeting exception was being used or misused to allow the GAA members to discuss public matters in closed sessions. So, we have a member of the airport authority who's an attorney who was a judge, a city judge, saying at the January 21st meeting, who was in those closed door meetings, that yes, indeed, there were discussions happening that were beyond what was allowed, and these closed door sessions were going on. Then we add the FOIA request that I have also asked. I also filed a pleading in that. We just, on January 12th, we received documents finally to a Freedom of Information Act request that we had submitted to the FAA. And in those documents was revealed that in September, there was a letter the FAA wrote to the airport authority asking for their concurrence to the Pilgrim's Pride 7460s they'd filed with the FAA. And there was a response that the airport authority lawyer...
Let's remind folks what the 7460 is for.
The 7460 is a airspace approval. The Pilgrims engineers had submitted a 7460 with the FAA, asking them to approve that the airspace, that it would not impede with the navigable airspace in order to build their rendering plant. And so they submitted that. And, we had been told that the FAA would not even consider that without the concurrence of the airport authority. And we'd been asking, where's this concurrence from the airport authority? And we had been told there was one. Come to find out, the FAA asked for the concurrence, just like they said they were going to, and the GAA on September 29th gave it. And we just found this out on January 12th, that this, in fact, had happened. Again, we knew this was going on. These closed-door meetings were going on. We were being told that that was not happening, but it was, that the GAA actually approved or concurred with Pilgrim's Pride's 7460s in response to the request from the FAA that they do that.
Now, to make sure we're being clear, when we say the GAA concurred, how are we determining that they concurred, and do we know in fact that the whole GAA, did they do it as a board and decide, or are there folks that appear to be acting unilaterally?
Right.
What can we deduce from what we've been given?
Our understanding so we have, and this is all uploaded online, the FAA on September the 16th wrote a letter to the GAA asking for their concurrence. And on September 29th, the GAA attorney emailed a letter that Billy Billingsley signed, where he states on behalf of the GAA that they basically approve of Pilgrim's Pride's plan. It's my understanding that this letter was never voted on. It was not discussed. It's my understanding that Ken Robertson found out about this letter after it was already done. It was discussed after the fact, but not before it was sent. So the idea that the Billy Billingsley, the chairman, on behalf of the airport authority, concurred with Pilgrim's Pride's rendering plan without a public meeting, a public vote, any type of public conversation, but it also appears it was done without full discussion and disclosure to the entirety of the GAA board itself until after it was done.
Now, do you know, for a 7460, just taking a 7460, do you know if the chairman of the GAA would have the authority to sign off on something like that?
It's not just my position would be that he's not just signing off on a 7460 that's some routine action. He is he is saying, based on our understanding of Pilgrim's Pride proposal, it appears that Pilgrim's Pride has addressed concerns regarding the potential attraction to wildlife. As we understand it, the Pilgrim's proposal seems to state that wastewater processing will take place in closed containers. And it says, and so they're approving, Mr. Billingsley in this letter is saying, based on the proposal as the airport authority understands it, they have satisfied the concerns that they have. So it's more than just, yeah, we're okay with a routine piece of paper that Pilgrims has filed. They're approving their project as part of this letter, or Billy Billingsley is on behalf of the airport authority. First of all, to do that without all the airport authority members having voted, and then them having even voted in private. There was no even public discussion. So
would that be considered a crime?
It would not be a crime. It would be a civil breach of the Open Meetings Act is what it would be. Okay. So I don't see there is a necessarily a crime that happened as part, but whether it's a breach of the Open Meetings Act, and certainly a breach of his fiduciary duty as the chairperson of the airport authority to approve on behalf of a board without a public vote in any way, I think is a serious concern and something not to just be ignored. These are the same board members who were sitting there who did this. They're the same one. And so the risk with having the same actors that are still here, that are in the potential exposure of the damage that could be done to that airport,
right,
behind closed doors, is still there. And to ignore that and to just be like, oh, well, thanks for voting down the proposal at your meeting. There's the risk is still there. The concern is still there. And it's something that we need to watch and we need to be aware of. And quite frankly, we need to ask questions. How did we get here? And how do we make sure this doesn't happen again? They're still in these seats right now.
Right. So a big thing that has come out of the FAA documents, we appreciate the FAA. I will say I'm a little disappointed it took so long for the FAA to comply with the FOIA requests to get some of this stuff. But nonetheless, we have it. And then, of course, Ken's statement that he made at the last airport authority, obviously there's some folks everywhere in the community that are kind of like, oh my gosh, this rendering plant, isn't that done? Isn't it done? Isn't it done? First off, is there still potential threat out there of the rendering plant? Yeah. Yes, we believe, because there's no reason to believe anyone's word, and they aren't willing to put anything in a legal binding way. So yes, but to the bigger point, it's not about the rendering plant. It's about the behavior and the way they do business. What's going on that airport authority, if they're willing. I mean, let's not forget that you've got members of that airport authority that are on other boards, like the IDA. One is the attorney for the IDA, who is also a judge in the city of Southside. And then you've got another one that is a member of the executive committee of the IDA. And I'm not sure what else Tim McCartney is on. I can't remember off the top of my head what other boards,
around
if
town.
he's serving on. Mm-hmm. But the point being, and then of course, Spencer Williams is the Alabama Power rep. He's on a lot of different boards. As I understand it, that's kind of his whole job is to represent Alabama Power in the community. And
John Floyd might have put in his article. Yep. He might have posted about what other boards Tim is on to. I know John Floyd mentioned it.
So and I don't know of all the other members on the board besides Ken. Jonathan Welch is an attorney as well. Like I said, he's a judge in Southside. I would expect him to have an understanding of what is appropriate and inappropriate in executive session. Now it sounds like it's going to come down to an argument over the rules that abide by, or the rules that around executive sessions in court. I mean,
it is.
So it's going to be a differings of interpretations.
It probably will
stretches,
but it's going to be, to me, the fact that they voted the proposal, whether they voted up or down,
right.
in December, and they talked about these behind the scenes conversations they had.
They talked about, I mean,
without 1 minute, and just you can go back and look at every recorded airport authority meeting from after the proposals were made in August until when they did that vote. Not 1 minute of public discussion about the two proposals at all. Don't tell me that there was no that you have not one word of discussion, and then you just decide at the December meeting. There was even Jonathan Welch in his statement even talked about the behind the scenes conversations they'd been having with each other and other people about it. But you can't deliberate to the public for 1 minute. And we're just supposed to say, well, okay, we thank you. And we're going to now just,
so
come on. I mean, you've got to be, we were not foolhardy here.
Yeah.
And the problem's not solved.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So the other piece of that, or another piece in all of that, was Jim Williams' email to the FAA where he sent them, I believe it was to Rands Black, he sent them a copy of the, was it younger?
Of the Neil Schaefer October 14th report evaluating both proposals.
So an evaluation report, which we didn't
get.
So he sent it and asked the FAA to please keep this confidential, which to me sounds really odd. Number one, why would it be confidential at all? What does it have to do with litigation, which would fall under the open meetings and the executive sessions? But I mean, the very fact that, and I will say, I think Rands came back with an email of like, what do you want us to do with this? I don't understand. Great. You sent us this report, but so we can't have any discussion. Not once did any of those reports were they discussed, briefed, anything in public.
Until we received those reports after they voted.
Yep.
From Ken Robertson, who gave his copy out after the meeting was over with. So we're back at the public gets these reports after the vote's already happened, with not 1 minute of public discussion, with behind the scenes talks, and we're supposed to be okay with that after all we have learned in the past year about what behind the scenes means. I think that the expectation that there's some trust level that we're supposed to just shrug and be okay with that, I think that ship has sailed. And the idea, both with the city council that you see and the GAA, that we tell the public after the vote's over, and that they're just, that hasn't stopped. So we all just need to be aware that despite the public outcry, that is still the pattern. That is still what we're seeing.
Right.
And there's danger and risk that go along with that. So we just have to watch until the problem's fixed.
So to those that are sitting there saying, oh, is the rendering plan issue over? Look, it's become about far more than the rendering plan. Point blank. It's about the way we do business in Etowah County, and this gets to the core issues that we'll address. But let's jump in. Some good questions in here. Of course, everybody's going to be asking in some form or fashion, how can these people be held accountable?
So we have everybody. I think this whole group, I think people like John Floyd, I think everybody is trying to incorporate the accountability element, which is just so necessary in any leadership, by talking about it, by making the community aware of who's doing what and what's doing what. But as far as removal and fundamental change, look, we've said it for a while. It is going to take leadership that looks at the way that you govern people differently in order to have full accountability happen here. My concern is that if we're waiting on the AG to come up here and haul somebody off in handcuffs in some way, that is the accountability is built into the process of electing leaders.
Right.
That's what accountability is. And so as much as I would love for these airport authority members to be removed or resign, the council's not going to do that. that GAA is not going to do that. I mean, and as much as the public outcry should have an accountability element to it, right? It's going to ultimately be leadership change that's gonna accomplish that, and that's you. That's the people staying engaged, watching what's going on, and looking at those running for office and deciding who's going to best fix this problem.
And I believe so. The basic answer seems that it's the DA or the AG are the only ones that could impeach like that. Like so, right now today, if you want to get rid of them.
If you want to get the legal answer to that is the GAA bylaws state the only way that the Airport Authority board members can be removed is through impeachment. And impeachment under the Alabama Code is done by the DA. So the district attorney could bring impeachment proceedings if he believed that it qualified under that law in order to impeach them. That is the only two ways the GAA board members can be removed is impeachment, because that's what the bylaws say, or the city council could just dissolve the whole board completely. Those are legally the two ways.
While we're on this, I know there's some more questions in there, but this one, so can they be served with individual civil suits, which was
the Open Meetings Act case.
So that's basically already occurred.
That's what we've done. Yes, in their capacity as the members of the Airport Authority, the Open Meetings Act lawsuit names each of them. So yes, that's already been, to the extent there can be a personal civil case filed against them, that's already been done.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I was going to get another one, but somebody else popped in here, which is about the same.
And I can post.
Can someone file legal paper to the DA? Can we briefly kind of talk about that process?
So, in order for the district attorney to proceed with something, it's almost like it's not like there's a lawsuit that the district attorney that you can file with the district attorney, right? He's got to determine that impeachment proceeding, just like if a crime has happened, he's got to look at it. And so I have not approached him about it. I have not. So y'all don't, fuss with the DA that he hasn't already done all that. Quite frankly, I believe that the Open Meetings Act case needs to play out. I think we need to get the facts on the table, and I think it would be premature to start going down that road with him until we've got those facts out there. So I believe that it may or may not be a appropriate route to take, depending on what happens and what facts come out.
And just to be clear, I'm just bringing this up to get answers to the questions you guys are asking. So
that's why the Open Meetings Act case is an important case, and not only to try to have some accountability, but also to bring into the public light what happened and to get those facts out there, whatever that they are, so the public understands what laws might have been complied with and not have been complied with, so that those that can take action, we can see what they're going to do.
So Josh asks, how long before the letter, Mr. Billingsley's letter, was he appointed to and elected chairman of the GAA? You have roughly the timeline?
Yeah, Mr. Billingsley was elected the chairperson either late July or early August, and the letter he wrote to the FAA was September the 29th. So a couple of months.
So
Harry resigned in June, and I think Robert Turk was. That's why Robert Turk was addressed initially in this this FAA letter, because Robert Turk was the interim chairman for a short period of time, and then Billy was elected. But I don't think that was until maybe August that Billy was elected the chairperson.
All right. Mm-hmm. So I hope I see. a lot of questions about holding them accountable and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully, we've gone through most of that. I don't see. We'll save that one for in a few minutes.
Mm-hmm. Those are great questions, and those are the questions I know Michael's heard me rant about accountability. You know, that we can't and that's part of the reasons that these cases are important and they're still proceeding is that we can't just say, oh, all right, you know, I mean, because it doesn't solve the problem. The problem is still there. And you know that's not something that you need to be told. And until those fundamental foundational problems are fixed, we'll just be experiencing another rendering plant or some other issue. So yeah, I hear you.
All right. So when does the Open Meeting Act? What's the timeline looking like on lawsuits?
We filed a motion last week asking that Judge Steen set it for a hearing date, and we don't have the order back yet from him. But as soon as we know when the hearing, we've asked for it to be set before the next GAA meeting, which I think is the third Friday of the month. So we asked it to be set, if he can, if his court schedule will allow, to be set prior to that, because we believe it's very important before the GA continues more of these meetings that we address this and that we get some type of relief from the court if that's due to be had, if so that they don't continue.
So the other case would be open records.
That's right.
And I don't know that it's worth diving too much into that. I would encourage everybody. Last week, we uploaded basically this was where there are actually motions worth reading. Not that every motion isn't worth reading, Christy, but the motions and correct me. I'll try the quick summary version. Was basically the GAA attorney when he got called to the table with these FAA documents that were actually some of which are his own emails. He argued that, well, you didn't ask for that. You didn't ask me for the letter from Billy Billingsley. You didn't ask me for those. That was the best he could come up with as to why, and that he was working on getting all of that stuff together. So there were a couple of good motions back and forth. I think some very professional but aggressive responses. Would that be fair to say?
I think that would be fair to say. I think it is. We were not going to get that document, but for the FAA sending it to us, I believe. And the fact that we got it. So the idea that, again, we were supposed to ask for a document we didn't know it even existed. And that all you had to do was ask for it. Well, we didn't know that it even existed. And I think they had no intention of letting us know that it existed, because it's a very smoking gun.
Yeah.
It proves what we knew, that the GAA had in fact decided or been telling Pilgrims and the FAA that they approved of their project. And that was before the Neil Schaefer report was even, the Younger and Associates and Neil Schaefer, remember, they were doing their impartial third-party reports to evaluate both of these proposals. October was when those reports were done. This letter was September the 20th. They'd already made up their mind. So we know the reports that Neil Schaefer and Younger were slanted towards Pilgrims, because the GAA, based on the September 20th, had already said we're fine with their proposal and told the FAA that. So again, we knew all of it. We were being told that wasn't what was happening. It was, and now we've confirmed it, just like we did in court back in May. We'd been told over and over, there's nothing to see this here, this isn't going on, and then we go to court and we subpoena all of these records, and sure enough, what we had been saying for 6 months, we were right. And same thing here, we were right. What I don't want to have happen is that Pilgrims comes back again and we were right. All right. I mean, now it's not even, any other, right,
quite frankly, stupid idea that were to come up. How, if there's never going to be public deliberation and no discussions about any of that kind of stuff, if somebody else, some other entity came in right now and offered to buy up all that land, that wasn't Pilgrim's Pride for whatever reason, would they even handle it in such a way that we would know?
And we know we have no master plan with the city of Gadsden.
Right.
We know the city has said their master plan is we are a chicken county from egg to rendering plant. That's what their vision. They've, when people show you who they are, believe them. And they have shown us they have said what their vision for the county is.
Yeah.
And if you agree with that, then that's completely fine. But I would submit most of us don't agree with that. And so we know what their vision is, and they're conducting behind the scenes meetings in order to, the idea that we should be watching to make sure they don't fulfill that vision before any leadership change. If this city determines that a leadership change is due to happen, then, shame on us, right? So,
let me, and this, I think this is about the last stuff I would like. I'm trying to rack in my brain to see if we're missing anything before we kind of move on. But so where does the GAA get funds to hire these consultants, and how much are they paid? I know stuff has been uploaded. I think we just got, we actually did get some documents from the GAA. That's a bunch of financial stuff that we can probably
on Friday we got
get uploaded.
The Northeast Alabama Regional Aviation, the nonprofit that's the FBO. We had requested a bunch of financials from them. We finally got those on Friday. So, but none of, we did get some information about Neil Schaefer. We never got an answer. Okay, let me go back. We subpoenaed the records for all of that to know how much the GAA paid Younger and Associates and Neil Schaefer for the consulting work that they did. Younger and Associates, the contract was like $7,000, I think, is what they had paid, or at least that's what that contract says. The Neil Schaefer contract didn't have a dollar amount. It was some master agreement. That's one of the things I had asked for more information on. And it had, the dollar amounts were all sort of zeroed out, and there was supposed to be work orders that, anyway, we didn't get an answer. We never got an answer on Neil Schaefer, what they charged, not only for the October 14th report on the proposals, but for all their other work. We didn't get any answer on that. The contract they sent did not reflect how much they had gotten paid.
So out of that, or along that same lines, one of the other things that really jumps out at me, from my aviation background, and I'm not saying I'm remotely an expert. I haven't done land development, all that kind of stuff, but it is extremely interesting to me that the attorney is having so much discussion with the FAA. The attorney was not having discussions with the FAA's legal department. The attorney was handling the interface. So there's a couple of questions in that for me, and this, I don't want to get too deep into some of my thoughts with this, but more or less, in aviation, everything's about laws. It's all about the federal aviation regulations. Whether you're flying airplanes, controlling an airport, it's a very structured environment. So in a way, a lot of people that are involved in aviation, you do things because certain things say you can and can't and all that kind of stuff. So the idea that you pay a consultant, for one thing, that consultant, in my mind, would be the one that would interface with the FAA about something that is, hey, we're doing a land transaction, all of that kind of stuff. Or you would have an actual qualified airport manager who understands the federal aviation regulations and would interface. But the whole idea that we would, as a community or, as an airport authority, that you would pay, number one, the most expensive person that you could choose to go and interface and deal with the FAA. We've seen, and we brought it up with other issues of the attorney not allowing a member of the FAA, the wildlife, to address the GAA. Seems to be determining what's on the GAA agendas and what's not, and that seems kind of, I guess the best word I could say is a little overstepping or odd, to see an attorney that's really kind of running the show that much, given the circumstances that are going on. So
it depends on what the attorney's instructions from his client are, in whether he is being instructed to be an advocate for one proposal over the other, or not. I mean, the scope of the representation the attorney has is based on what the client instructs them. So,
well, I guess the best frame of reference I have with working with attorneys in the government would be in warfare, and so we've got JAGs and there's a lot of guys that have, hard feelings about the lawyers downrange. They're not there to determine whether you can or can't take actions. They're there to advise. And obviously, if you're going to do something illegal, they're there to advise that you're doing something illegal. But at the end of the day, the commander is the one that's in charge and should be making the decisions, knowing all the pieces of the puzzle. And that's the way the military operates. Again, this whole civil civil government, those municipal government stuff is a totally new. So maybe I'm way off base on all of this kind of stuff, but it just seems really weird that you've got an airport authority that appears to be run by their attorney. Well, maybe they were asked to be.
The whole question: who is the client? Is it Billy Billingsley as the chair? Is it some other member or members of the airport authority? It's not all of them. We know that because not all of them apparently were there. It's hard to answer that. Is it is someone at City Hall calling the shot? Not knowing who the client is and what their instructions are. That's again another transparency issue where we're really not sure who is in charge and who is meeting, and there's no public type of a conversation. So that's questions that we just don't know what the scope of his role is. So
anywho's, that's again, that was just something that kind of stuck out to me, and maybe it doesn't stick out as much if you're not. And those of you that are also in the aviation community, let me know if I seem way off base on some of that. But having been a guy that's dealt with the FAA on a regular basis, if you're trying to get an aircraft approved to fly, and you're dealing with the FSDO or a different office of the FAA, you're not calling an attorney and saying, "Hey, go deal with the FAA." You deal with it because it's the federal aviation regulations. What allows me to fly this airplane or doesn't? What allows me to sell this land? What is the compliance that this airport has to meet? Those are not things that you pull attorneys into. You have experts. In theory, Neil Schaefer, as a consultant, would have either a team of attorneys or attorneys that are smart on aviation law that they would ask. But that's why they have like the whole airport manager program at places like Auburn University to train people how to be experts in those things. Anyways, I go on and on, but that just seems odd to me. It sure, I don't know. Back to the leadership question: who's really running the show?
And what the instruction? Right. I think it appears from all the evidence we have that Neil Schaefer and the counsel for the airport authority, that the scope of their job was to advocate for the Pilgrim's Pride plant. That's what they were hired for. That's what they were getting paid to do. That's what their client, whoever that was instructing them to do. So what was the leadership in the airport authority that was directing its consultants and attorneys in order to do that against the public will and against and without the public being aware of that? So they could have hired 20 other people to advocate in order to. The point is why were they advocating for a rendering plant at the airport? How did we get to the point where that was going on, and that was the vision that the airport authority had? So that's my 2 cents on that one.
All right, guys. I'm not seeing any other questions about that. I think that's most of the update. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover?
The zoning case is still there. It has an April trial date right now. The airport authority and the city are all taking the position that those cases are due to be dismissed because it's over with and it's done, and we're taking the position that, that's great let's put that in writing. And we'll be happy to entertain a motion to dismiss those cases if you will put that in writing. And they've yet to, do all that. I'm not saying that we can't get there. That's our hope. We really want this to be over and concluded so we can move on to other things. So I haven't heard. I mean, if there's any type of other than the rumblings that I generally hear, it's not over, it could be here, we're following that. I know you guys are too. We have our ear to the ground. We're not putting our guard down without something in writing. But hopefully we can achieve that. If not, we're going to proceed with our case unless the judge tells us that we don't have one.
So, question: Do we believe that Pilgrim's Pride will try something else before elections?
I don't know. They could or they could not. I don't know.
The way I would answer that is that time and time again, we've been shown that the public officials that we have, particularly that are in the places, in the offices that could make the decisions, we can't trust what they say. So, and that kind of goes back to why is the zoning case not dropped? Because they basically, all they've said is we're going to vote down that proposal. And they voted on that, and that's great, but that's meaningless based on all the other stuff we're seeing. So I think that's the way I would answer that on Will Pilgrim's Pride. I sure hope not. But I know we've still got folks that are keeping an eye on ADEM because while they may have pulled their permits, it wouldn't take all that much to get that stuff back. But I think that's the best answer that I've got as to why it's not over. Well, because we don't believe. I mean, we don't believe you. I mean, we just don't. We've got proof of lies back to 2020, and then more lies and more lies. So I don't know what else to say on that.
And
so
the closer we get to hopefully a leadership in office that we can feel confident that will change the relationship that we're talking about, they're going to run out of time, right?
Yeah.
But we're still within a window that they could have time. I'm not saying that they are or they're not, but there is a window, and that we've just got to watch and be mindful of that. And then my hope and prayer is that we do have some level of security and comfort once there's some leaders in there that we feel like the relationship and the transparency is where we need it to be. Then we can relax and go, okay, that solves the problem. So look, we just want the problem solved, whether it's through the court, whether it's through elections, whether it's through a written agreement, whatever. We just want the problem solved. And I know you guys understand that. Y'all have been with us from the get-go. You understand what we're having to deal with.
All right. So we're at 53 minutes now. So I want to transition and touch base. Some of these questions kind of lead into, and like we've said, the issues that we're talking about, we think have kind of come out of, this is what we've seen out of the rendering plant. So let me bring those up on the screen here. So if you haven't seen the video that I put out, the quick and dirty is as I've said, the rendering plant, we believe, is merely a symptom of a systemic problem that we have in this community. People have asked, who are we supporting for political office, for elections, and all that kind of stuff. First and foremost, Advanced Etowah is not about supporting people. We have nothing to do with supporting individual politicians. That wasn't where we came from. We came from trying to figure out how to solve and stop the rendering plant from coming to Etowah County. And that remains our number one objective and issue. But out of that, as we've looked at what all got us to this rendering plant thing, we started to really look at what all is broken. And we've talked about all of this. So none of this is new. This is stuff that we've talked about as a community, but just trying to put it in to some categories to try and help everybody as we go through the election cycle and what we want to have discussions about with the community, and then eventually discussions with those that are running for office. I will say I have no intention of getting any candidates on here for any discussions, probably till maybe the end of March, maybe getting into April. Right now, what I want to do is have discussions on these issues with people that actually know and understand these issues. Not saying that some of our elected officials and some of those running for office don't understand them, but they're certainly not experts in them. So that's my hope, is to get people that don't necessarily have a political agenda to just have some conversation about these issues. So we talk about the leadership, and the quick and clean version of that is we need leaders, not just elected officials. So we need to get actual leadership in the elected positions. And we need people that will actually step up and offer leadership. Proper government structure. The IDA is a glaring example of that as an issue. And if you take a look at, and again, we're going to talk more and more about all this stuff, but the proper government structure, that IDA, the whole way that it's structured, is it, number one, is it even really legally, or maybe it's not necessarily illegal, but is it formed under the proper state statutes, and then is it formed in such a way that offers transparency
and accountability?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then does it have the right people on it? Do we have the right representation? And I don't just mean necessarily race. I think that's more representation of the actual communities that we have. Because I would argue, if you look at, and I saw a comment in there about no more dual members on all these boards. I would agree. For the most part, there may be some exceptions of some of these boards that you could, you're not really going to run into conflicts. But the biggest thing is the people that are on these boards, there needs to be, who are they representing? Number one, in the community, and what is it that they're bringing to the table? I will cite the is it the plumbers board, or it's a bunch of plumbers, like master plumbers, that are on there, and that makes a lot of sense. And then you jump over on an airport authority, and you had no one with aviation experience in charge of an airport. So when we talk about that proper government structure, and then that gets into the overlap. And I don't just mean necessarily the board members, but then the attorneys that are brought on to advise these boards. And when you end up with conflicts, and I know Christy is involved. If you look at the diagram that I've got, her name's in red. She's involved in being an advisor, a legal advisor, and being the lawyer for a number of these boards. But those are hard conversations. Actually, not really hard conversations. They're conversations that we need, and they're issues that need to be addressed. Because I believe that just the very nature of the way we do business, the way our government is structured across Etowah County, is a major piece of preventing us from being able to move forward. There's plenty of cliche things you could say. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. There's too many generals. And then when you have these boards, how are they coherently working together? And which of course we'll jump into master plan here in just a second. But that's the proper government structure. First responders, guys, this had nothing to do with the rendering plant, other than as everyone started paying attention, And now we're hearing, all these issues that have come to light, and as more and more people have been watching city council meetings, and we're learning these issues, folks that have made comments in the opposition group and published, we have a problem in the city of Gadsden. They cannot retain, skilled, qualified firefighters, paramedics, and a lot of it has to do with pay. As a retired military guy, I know you always hear the military and our cops and firefighters all need to get paid more. In this case, it's literally true. I mean, it really is true. I think they're starting at $10.38 to come in to be a firefighter. And it's not necessarily just about getting more money, but it's also relative. They're the lowest paid. The city of Gadsden, I believe, the lowest paid, as I understand it, in basically the surrounding region. That's alarming, because if I don't have basic safety, if I'm sitting here in Christie's office, and I want to call 911 because I have an emergency, I want to know somebody's showing up, and I want to know that the most qualified folks are going to show up. So, props, everything I hear from the firefighters that I do know, they're working their tails off to try and meet the basic requirements of keeping the trucks manned, and providing the support to the community. So I think that is a major thing, that if you can't fix it, I mean, who wants to live in a community that can't provide basic life-saving and life-protecting capabilities? Infrastructure, that's a whole long discussion. Hopefully that's fairly straightforward. We've got major infrastructure issues, and I know, in all fairness, I know they're making plans. That's been a discussion in the last couple of city council meetings. They seem to be making plans, allocating the ARP funds to solve some of those issues.
They are, but the concern is that we've got a system that's been in decay for so many years that even they talk up at the city, they say it almost every week, that $11 million of ARP funds is going to infrastructure, but they could use $100 million. The problems are that bad. And while I appreciate the fact the problems are, but that just didn't happen overnight. There's a systemic leadership failure to address basic, healthy water, sewer issues, and there are particular areas of town that are impacted more by that. And nobody wants themselves or their neighbors to have sewer running up into their home, and their presents for Christmas for their children are ruined because of the backflows. I mean, these are the stories that we hear.
That happened. That actually happened. And that
ties into leadership, because you just didn't happen. This didn't happen overnight, and we got to have leaders in there that recognize that these fundamental foundational issues are important. That's my 2 cents on infrastructure.
So an infrastructure, and all of this ties in the master plan. The old saying, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I believe we got some 1970s era document is the last actual master plan for the city of Gadsden. If you want to take a look at it, but the point is, we've got out of a plan, and I am a big proponent, and that's where we're at with Advance Etowah as a whole. We've got to have a countywide master plan. We've got to figure out how to develop a plan that is countywide. We're too small for everybody to have their own stuff. I know Rainbow City and Southside are currently developing master plans themselves. I know they're having. I'm gonna guess they're probably the mayors are talking on a fairly regular basis about what they're doing with a lot of that, and they've actually we're gonna get them on hopefully in the next few weeks to kind of talk about what that looks like and what their thoughts are. But master plan for the county, and this gets into the discussion of, oh, what do the Rainbow City folks, need to not tell the Gadsden folks what to do. And that discussion needs to be, people need to just stop listening to that discussion. That's ridiculous. It's the most ridiculous thing I've heard in all of this. Everyone lives and works in a different municipality, or at least the vast majority of people that live in Etowah do. So that whole concept, but we're too small to that airport and that airport development plan. That airport affects way more than just Gadsden. I would even say it affects the surrounding counties. Well, what's the discussion that's being had at the county level? That airport is a major gem. That's what we mean with the master plan. It's a no-brainer. It has to be developed. And out of that master plan, one of the benefits of having that master plan is it then informs all the rest of the government structure. You now have a tool that helps inform all of these different boards on the decisions that they make, as far as, where do we prioritize spending money? Do we prioritize, obviously right now, like the flooding issues in East Gadsden are one of the number one priorities, but I would even take into the discussion of, and I don't have any idea, and this is what I hope to talk about, but, in the months to come, so completing 759 versus building a new bridge in Southside. Now, I don't know, maybe there's plenty of money to do both at the same time, but do we have a mechanism? How does that even work, that we're deciding as a community which one should be prioritized? Because they probably affect everyone equally in terms of which one you affect, and then what's the so what? Why are we doing it? Is it part of some plan? Hey, phase 2, after this gets done, that's going to open up doors to do other things. It's critical. It's absolutely critical.
Well, and to me, it's not only for all those reasons, but it's also, again, it's about about the relationship, about getting community input.
Right.
What do you guys think is the most important thing? Why? It's your master plan. It's not their master plan to impose on you. That's more of the relationship that we keep seeing, this relationship that the leaders go, well, here's my plan, which I'm going to work back behind the scenes, behind closed doors, and I'm going to impose on you. It's about the relationship. Let's work together to inform what the public thinks the master plan, what our county should be going, and then our leaders implement that. And so, again, it all goes back to leadership and the relationship between those in leadership and those that they serve. So
then the education side of things, that's one, again, not necessarily born out of the rendering plant, but just out of a lot of the focus on a lot of things. And the elephant in the room with the education piece would be the city council passing a budget that doesn't have any funding for their own school system. There's tons of time and lots of other folks that are talking about that. And that's a great discussion. One of the things that really sticks out with me that honestly I had never thought about, and as I've learned over the last year in discussing with a lot of your major industry, the education system, and it makes sense. I mean, I'm not saying this is rocket science, and probably shame on me for not really thinking about it. But if you want to attract business and people that want to move into the area, they're bringing families with them. They're asking, their associates to move into the area. They want to move into a good area that's taking care of the kids, that has a top-notch school system, and they, part of what's the overall leadership atmosphere and the governmental atmosphere in the community, it speaks volumes in terms of the support that you have for that education system. So even when you talk about business development, that education system is a big piece of that. And then you take that the next step further in what is what is being, what is being done to prepare our kids for the future. I mean, guys, like artificial intelligence is a thing that's coming. Self-driving cars are here. Autonomous factories. I mean, all this kind of stuff. Like, are we prepared? I'm not saying we're not. I'm just saying those are the things. Like, we need to not just be talking about some basic issues here with education. And one of the great things that I've learned that I was not aware is the relationship, for example, of University of Alabama and Mercedes. One of the reasons Mercedes located near Tuscaloosa was because basically they had a good relationship with the university to crank out people that they needed for leadership in engineering and other things. So, that's there's a lot to be unpacked under that education. And obviously, we want to, even down at the primary levels, we need to be providing we should be setting a standard as one of the denser populated areas in the region. We should be setting a standard, not the one that says, well, at least we're not, Etowah County. So anyways, that's the education piece of that. And then obviously the positive business environment, find me business owners around anywhere in this community. They're like, oh yeah, having a business in Gadsden is a breeze. It's awesome. It's completely, I don't have to worry about it at all. It's massively supportive and, just frees me up for so much more time to do other things to build my business. So until you have a business environment where the folks that are here are excited about working here, why are we having discussions about recruiting other businesses? That doesn't make any sense to me. The number of business owners that I've talked to, contractors that I've talked to, they're like, yeah, I really won't do work in the city of Gadsden anymore. It's just not worth it. Not worth it to me. So, I don't understand all of those problems. There are tons and tons of people that understand that infinitely more than I do. And that's what I'd like to talk about. But it's telling to me when you talk to enough business owners, and that's not just about making more money for business owners. That's not what that's about. That's about growing more opportunity, growing more jobs, raising the per capita income, attracting better and bigger businesses. But those are discussions we need to have. How do we get after solving these problems? We're not trying to sit here and tell everybody this is how you need to do it. What we'd like to see is, because there are a lot of different ways to tackle these things. Where do we want to go as a community in a master plan? Do we want to be a tourism-based economy, or do we want to try and land one big industry, or, do we want a little of everything? That's the discussion under there. How do you restructure the GAA? Because we definitely think it needs to be restructured. How do you restructure the IDA? There's different ways of doing that, and that's where we'd really like to see those that are running for election.
Or if you think it doesn't need to be. We need to know that.
Yeah.
If you're running for office and you think, I think the IDA and the GAA are just fine, then that's a good piece of information for us to have. Is people need to know that.
Yeah. Now, I will say, as Advanced Etowah, we will say, well, we wholeheartedly disagree with you. Mm-hmm. And that's the only thing that would really put us against. So we're not for or against candidates. We're for or against certain stances on issues. And we think these issues are some of the, and there's probably some other ones, and then that'll come up in discussion as we move along. But, in terms of things that'll really move the needle, that's where we feel like a lot of the effort and focus needs, and there's going to be shiny objects that people want to talk about. We can get into discussions about different taxes, occupational taxes. All of those are good discussions to be had, but I almost feel like we can't even get to that because, what are we going to spend this money on? Well, it's not even part of a master plan. Well, the people that would be forming that master plan are part of a governmental structure that doesn't even make sense and doesn't even have good processes. The budgetary development process for the city of Gadsden. Can we even really get to a point of discussing what's in that budget when the very process of developing that budget doesn't make sense? So that's when I say these are really core, basic things. You know, if you disagree that we have structural issues, you know, then yeah, I guess we're not necessarily going to be a supporter of you as a candidate. You know, what we want to hear is, how are you going to fix these problems? So I don't know. Does that make sense, guys? I appreciate those of you that have hung in there. How about real audits? Yeah. Looking through the audits, are they together? You know, where's all of the money flowing? I mean, guys, and we're not saying it's easy. Like, it's a lot of hard work. So, anywho's, that's where we're at. Is there anything else that we kind of
got it? I think thank you everybody for taking the time to care, right, and to be engaged, and to realize that it's a really important year, and I think we've known that. I think that we keep uncovering more and more that confirms what we already know, and that's exciting though. I think that's an opportunity. That's a really exciting thing. Let's just all stay awake and aware and watch, and and just, you know, this group that's watching, you followed, you understand probably just as well as we do where we've been and why we have the concerns we all have. So
we're trying to do a weekly show. I'm trying to line up every Monday. It'll fluctuate on time. I know probably doing it in the evenings would probably be best for everybody, but particularly right now, I'm dealing with trying to get to basketball games. So we're going to try and do that as best we can for interaction. Like I said earlier, I don't plan to really get candidates on anytime soon, because I quite honestly don't care what they have to say right now. I want to understand the issues a little bit better before I really start bringing them on to discuss that. Debates, forums, roundtable discussions, whatever you want to call it. We're certainly, those are discussions we're having on the best way to do that, so that it's a meaningful event. I think Capal's planning on doing a debate. I know Andre Huff. Sorry, apologize, Andre. You know, they're having some great discussions on their shows. And I'd encourage you to continue to listen and pay attention.
It's Real Talk with Pastor Z,
yeah,
Bishop T.
Yeah, Real Talk.
It's a good show on Thursday nights at 6:30.
Yeah, I mean, you want to hear about education? Jump on there. They've got some good stuff. So there's a lot of great conversation going on. I know a lot of folks are going to get tired of it for a long time. But I'm looking forward to hopefully giving you guys some good information, some good things to talk about, and all as a community have this discussion, you know, here on the evil Facebook and on YouTube. But you know, it's discussions that we need to have. You know, if folks choose not to engage in the discussions, that's fine. You know, I got it. But this is what I think we need to do. And I am massively humbled that anyone else would listen. And hopefully it won't be about listening to me or really talking to me. It'll be about folks like her and other guests that'll come on that really know what they're talking about, and answering questions. So with that, I think we are going to wrap it up for the day and plan on, jumping in next week with something. So not quite sure yet, but we'll figure it out. And, of course, as we get other updates, other things that drop, we'll get posts out and try to keep everybody appraised of what's going on with the legal cases and other things. So, thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Michael, for all your time as well, and to everybody watching.
And guys, y'all have a great Monday, a great week, and stay encouraged. I think our county's headed in a great direction, and I am super excited about it. See you guys.